All right, so this is where we left off last time with the character. We have an eyeball done, painted. We have a one eyeball that doesn't have a texture map. That's the one we originally painted. And then under the subtools, if we click on the other eyeball, we should be able to go to texture map and see that there is a texture map there. So one eyeball has the UVs laid out, textures projected onto it, and then the other eyeball does not. So we need to get the clear part of the eye built too. So I'm going to go up to my subtools. I'm going to go to insert, and I'm going to insert another sphere. And because the eyeball is right here at the origin, I should be able to just go to scale and scale it down to fit. Now the idea with this is to get it so that it pokes through. Okay, if we don't see anything poking through, that means that this eyeball is turned off. So I'm going to click the eyeball for that eyeball. And then scale it up again until we see it poke through like that. There we go. Okay. Now it looks like it's maybe a little bit off, so I can just nudge that and nudge that, and then maybe spin around to the front view. And somehow it just got off just a bit. So I'm just adjusting it. There we go. If it's off a hair like like that, that's fine. Okay, so that lines up pretty good. I'm going to make it a smidge bigger. There we go. And then I'm going to rotate it. Okay, so if I just click on this other eye for a second, click this one off, you'll see that the front of the eye is on the right. So I want to make sure that my rotation here rotates to have it frontward. So I just start dragging, hold shift, and snap it to 90 degrees. So now it should be lined up. And if I turn on my wireframe, let's just make sure that those are still lined up. I'm going to click on this one. Okay, so the pole should be facing that way. Let's turn that back on, spin around. And it looks like the pole for that is facing that way. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this eye. Yep, there it is. And I'm going to hit Q. Now I'm just going to select this area here. Now it might be difficult to see where the other eyeball is underneath it. So if I come over here and hit transparency, I should be able to get an idea of where that is. Okay, so I can do this a couple ways. I can use my transforms. I can activate my radial symmetry. Probably don't need 51, probably 28 or so is good. Okay, and then I can hold control with my mask pen and then select it. It does look like it's a hair off though still. My symmetry is not lining up perfectly, so maybe this would be a better tool to use the mask perfect circle right there. So I'm going to turn my symmetry off by hitting X. I'll drag the control key, and then I'll use the space bar to line it up right to the center. Let go space bar, keep dragging. And I'm just trying to get the shape of that. So that looks pretty good there. Okay, so that looks like I have the area selected of where it would jut out, because this part of the eyeball here, the clear part, doesn't just go straight, it actually like sticks outward. So then I'm going to go to my scale tool. I'm going to unlock it and move it to the base of where the selection is. Lock it again, and then just use the green and then just scale that up. Okay, now it's scaling the opposite, so I'm going to hit undo, control click, and then drag the green. You don't have to give it a lot, just a little bit, just so it pushes out, and then that should be good. Okay. Oops. Looks like I also selected the back, so let's hit undo. Let's control marquee the back of this. All right, so now we've deselected that. We'll go back to our scale tool, scale that up again. Yep, I don't have the back selected. It wouldn't have hurt anything at this point, but let's say we want to animate this, later down the road, it could. All right, so that's good. So I'm going to go back to my draw. I can hit Control D on this just to help smooth it out. Turn my transparency off. Turn my polyframe off. And then maybe I'll use my smoothing at this point just to kind of smooth some of those edges a little bit more. All right, so that looks pretty good. All right, so now that I have this, I want to move these two shapes into position. So I'm going to control drag just to deselect. So I just control dragged out there. I'm going to join these two together. So I'm going to go to this one, which is my textured one. If you get confused, you can go down to rename, and you can say textured eye. So that's the one we're going to use. And then I can go to this one and then rename this one. I believe this is the Scalera. That's probably how you spell it. Eye. Okay. So I'm going to go to my textured eye, and I'm going to go to merge, and I'm just going to say merge down. And what this does is it merges this layer into that layer. And then I hit OK. There we go. Now we did lose our texture on that, so let's hit undo. Maybe we don't want to do that. Lesson learned here. I undid it, and then that went away, so I'll bring that back. Once I split them, then they should be good. All right, so let's just go to the move tool. Let's bring the guy back. And then I'm just going to unlock this, reset it. So I'm just going to rotate this back so it's straight. And then I'm going to go to my move tool and then just move it back into position. Now I might need to scale it down some, because obviously the eye is huge. It might be bigger than I originally created it, but we'll see once we start positioning it. Okay, I think it's actually a good size for where he's at. Okay, obviously I can go too far, that's a bad thing. I do want to rotate it some. And I think I will scale it down just a smidgy. There we go, so that should be good. And then I'm going to go down to my split, and I'm going to say split two parts. And then hit OK. Yep, there we go. So it did bring that back, which is what I assumed. And then we have this. Now I might need to adjust some stuff. So you can see here we're getting this like weird lower lip thing, lower lid. So if I go to this, make sure my eyeballs are turned on for these. There we go. And I'm doing this without the bottom one on, just because of that will be transparent. So I'm just kind of moving this so that it feels more natural. Okay, and I do the same thing on the top. Maybe this is a little bit too, turn my RGB off for the smooth. And I'm just nudging that in and then giving a little bit of smoothness. I shouldn't need a whole lot, just a little nudge. Okay, so there's one eye. If I need to adjust it, again, I can grab them, merge them together, move them. I'm just going to leave them where they're at for now. When I want one on the other side, I can just go to duplicate, grab the other one, duplicate, and then just scroll down to geometry, scroll down to modify topology, and then say mirror. Actually, sorry, not that one. That's a different one. I'm going to go to deformation, there it is, and then I'm going to do mirror here, and that mirrors it. So I've mirrored the clear part over. I'm going to go to the textured eye and do the same thing. Go to deformation, go to mirror, and then I should have, if I open up my subtools, I should have a clear part for each eye and a colored part for each eye. Okay, so that gives me my eyes in the right spot, and now we need to do something for the character. So I'm just going to save this. Okay, so right now I should be able to export the eyes geometry and export the eyes textures and get those out and be able to use those in another application if I need to. If I wanted to bring the character head out, I have to do a little bit more work. So I need to create a UV version of this. So what I'm going to do is go to him, and I'm going to duplicate him. Okay, so he's like, this is just a copy of him. And I'm going to go to Z plugin. I'm going to go to Decimation Master. And then inside here, this is what's going to allow me to lower his resolution. Okay, so right now he's at 3.35 million. That's way too much. So I'm going to go to the number of polygons here. And if I just say pre-process current, That means do it to this subtool. It's going to analyze the mesh, and it's going to figure out what shapes are absolutely necessary in order for us to create the geometry in the low resolution format. So pre-processing just goes through and does kind of like a preview, and then once I go to my Z plugin and I hit decimate, I'll actually decimate it. And so you'll see this part it doesn't take terribly too long, but obviously the more detail you have, the longer it's going to take. Now it's doing a reordering, now it's computing. Okay, and so now it's done pre-processing. So now I can go into this and I can say, how much decimation do I want? Okay, and that just means like lower the resolution. As I drag this, you can see that these numbers get higher. Okay, so if I were to go to, let's say, 84%, that means that whatever my number is here, it's going to take 84% of that. So we want this to be pretty low. So I'm going to drop this down to probably 15%. This will give me, let's go even less, let's go 10%. This will give me 733,000 polygons. Okay, so I'm going to take that and I'm going to say decimate current. And now it's actually going to go through and create a decimated version of that model. Now I'm seeing two things here. I'm seeing the colored one, which is right there, and I'm seeing the decimated one right here. This one has about 366,000 active points. If I turn off the other one, you can see that the details are actually still here. Like we didn't lose like a whole lot of detail. We obviously lost the color, but we didn't lose the detail. Okay, so now that I have this version of him that is decimated, I'm going to go to my Z plugins. I'm going to go down to UV Master, and I'm going to say unwrap. Okay, now again, anytime you see all, that means do it for everything visible. We don't want to do that. I just want to do it for the one that I'm currently selected on. I can also turn symmetry off. We don't really need symmetry in this point. We'll just try it without it first. And then let's say unwrap. Okay, now this will do an automatic unwrapping job. Now it's thinking, so just give it time. It says unwrapping polygroup 1 of 1. So just keep an eye on that. When that's all done and ZBrush is allowing you to move, then you know that the unwrapping part is finished. So while we're waiting, I'll show this, which is a Keyshot bridge. All the stuff that we're doing right now is alleviated with this $149 add-on to your ZBrush Keyshot thing. And basically what it does is it allows you to go through and click a single button to transfer all of this information. So you don't have to do any UV layouts, you don't have to do any decimation. It's just basically you go right from ZBrush into Keyshot, and then you can work back and forth, updating your mesh, changing things on the fly, which is obviously a lot easier. And if you really do get into doing this kind of workflow, this is definitely a plugin that you would want to have. Now if you don't have regular Keyshot, you can get Keyshot right here for ZBrush plus the bridge for $549, or you can get it regular for that. Obviously the $549 one's going to allow you to do a lot more stuff, export it a lot more different ways. It's just a matter of how in-depth you're doing your stuff. Obviously the pros in the industry are doing those kinds of things, and the Keyshot does need to be updated every time there's a new version, so you do have to keep paying for that. Whereas ZBrush, obviously you have one license, one time, and you just keep getting updates for free. You can see all the different work that people have done using this tool. It's a pretty amazing workflow. Hard surfaces, soft surfaces, you name it, they are doing it. So we're just going to wait for this to get done. And that's part of the unfun of this, is sometimes you hit these things where it just takes forever. The less polygons we would have on this, the less time it would take. So it's kind of a balance of how low of a division do I have before I lose anything. Alright, so it looks like it's done now. So we're going to go to Z plugin. It's unwrapped. So we're going to go down to flatten. And wait again. There it is. So this is what the UVs look like all flattened out. It doesn't look pretty for sure, but they are laid out. And now we can jump back to unflatten. And then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the texture from our material one and project it onto the other one. Now, if there was an issue with your item and it doesn't turn out good, you may have to decimate it further down and then lay out the UVs again. But in this case, it seems to work fine. So I'm going to make sure that both of these are on. So I have my purple one, I have my gray one now. I'm going to turn the eyeballs off. Okay, so I just see the only items that I'm working with, which is the colored head and the gray head. Make sure that the gray head is selected. I'm going to turn on the colored one. There we go. And then I'm going to scroll down to, in the same area, in the subtool area, I'm going to scroll down to where it says project, and I'll project it. Now, something to note here is that this, the amount of divisions on this one is how we're painting, so the finer detail, the more resolution we're getting. On this other one, as we've added, let me click the other one again, there we go. As we've reduced the amount of divisions, the painting may not be as high quality, so we may actually have to subdivide it in order to get the highest quality version, but we'll see how it turns out. So I'm going to go to project. I'm going to say project all. And what it's going to do is project the texture from one to the other. Make sure you do have the uncolored one selected, because that's where you want to project to. And then we wait. This process usually doesn't take too long. There we go. And now it's done. So now what I want to do is I want to turn off the full res one. I want to turn off the wireframe on this one. Turn it off. There you go. And then I just want to inspect the texture just to make sure that everything has come over. Sometimes you will get some spots where the texture didn't come over nicely, and then I would just subdivide the lower resolution one. But it looks like everything seems to have come over pretty well. Yep, no big issues here. Okay, even get in there, you know, just to kind of inspect, just to see. You will notice a slight difference, but if you see anything huge, obviously that needs to be addressed. All right, so I'm going to click back on my low res one. I'll do a little quick save. Now you still could update this, so if I wanted to, I could come to that low res one and still paint onto the texture. I have not actually created a texture yet. All we have is basically a low res image of that, or a low res poly paint. Now I'm going to scroll down to the UV map, tell it that I want a 4K map, so I click the 4K button. Then I'm going to go to texture map, go to create, and then I'm going to say texture from poly paint. And what this does is it takes that poly paint and actually builds it into a texture map that will be output. And so all that stuff that's right there will come into it. Now at this point, I can't paint the texture on there. I'd have to remove the texture map, and then it would allow me to paint on top of it. So now that we have that one all set up, the texture's all laid out on it. It helps to kind of rename these as you go, just so you don't get confused. So I'm going to make sure I label this one as the textured one. I'll do the same thing with the eyes here. So make sure I know which one is the UV'd one, which one is the textured one, and label them accordingly. And I'll save my project. It doesn't hurt to save multiple iterations. If anything, it helps. All right. So now I'm going to export that head out. So I made sure that that subtool was selected. Nothing else is turned on. I went to export, and I'm going to export it as an OBJ. You'll notice there is a Maya export here, so if you're going to bring this back into Maya, you can do that. But just this OBJ one will suffice. Takes a minute to do its stuff. And then I'll do the same thing with the eye. So grab the eye, export that out. And all we're doing at this point is just testing out all of our stuff to make sure that everything is coming in correctly. The left eye is obviously in a different spot than the right eye, so we'll have to export each one of those separately. And then as we're going, we're just going to go to Keyshot and import, and then find those pieces. So here is the head, and you'll notice the file size is, pretty close to the other one. The only thing we need to do here is make sure it says keep original, and you'll see that it has some other options, but we'll just ignore those for now. And there he comes in. Now you'll notice that his texture also did come in with him. As we were exporting, it exported out also the texture map for him. So we'll bring in the eye. We'll notice that up here it says update geometry. We don't want to do that. We just want to add to scene, keep original as well. We'll import, and we'll find something didn't go right. Okay, so our eye texture didn't come in. So something happened while we were combining things, moving things around, that we just lost that texture. So what we're going to have to do is I'll try the other eye just to see if that's the same case. Call that one right. And grab the clear parts, export those out. And then the same thing, I'm calling it clear right, clear left, whatever their corresponding name is. Now there's no UVs or texture maps for those. It's just going to be a clear glassy material. So we don't need to worry about that. And then we're going to jump back into Keyshot and then just re-import all the stuff. Now they should pop in the exact spot that they were inside of Zbrush. So again, add to scene, keep original. There's a clear part. Very repetitive process at this point. It's just doing the same thing over and over again, making sure the boxes are checked. There we go. So there's all of our stuff, and let's see what the eyes look like. So I'm gonna go to my first I want to fix this. There's a shadow right in the middle of him, so I need to raise him up. So I'm going to take all of his pieces here. Oh, not yet. Let's go look at the diffuse map. So this map here, that's the texture that brought in. That's the file that it named. If I go to the folder, I'd be able to see that's where it saved it, and if I wanted to go into Photoshop, I could do update that. So now I'm going to go and grab all the stuff. And you'll see the color didn't come in from this one. Let's see if the eye material has anything here, and it's not there. I have to go into the right folder. And no, there's nothing here for the eyes. Okay, the head texture came out, but not the eyes. So let's jump back to ZBrush and figure out why that didn't come out. So I'm going to click on the eyes. I'm going to go to Z plugin, and I'm just going to export out the texture. So here you can export out individual maps. So initially we were just getting the color. Here I can tell it exactly what I want. I want ambient occlusion. I want texture. This is the resolution that I want. And then I can say create all types. I don't want to hit subtools because that would do all of them. I just want to do the one I have selected. Okay, it says it exported in 4 seconds. It was surprisingly quick. Let's see if it brought anything out. So again, it jumped me to the wrong folder. Now we'll go to 20, character. Nope, still nothing here. Alright, so something went wrong. Something didn't transfer correctly. And this is just part of that process of things just happening. So I made sure all the maps were there. It's not putting it into a folder. Everything is right in that spot. Okay, it should be in that spot. Alright, now it says something about no UVs. Okay, so that's suspicious. So I think what happened is the UVs are gone. Yep. So I tried flattening, nothing happened there. Let me just clean up some of the stuff that I don't need anymore. Delete this. Alright, so now I have just that. So I'm going to delete the other eye because I have to redo basically the UVs on this one. So I'm going to duplicate that eye. I'm going to go back to Z plugin. I'm going to say unwrap. There we go. And it's thinking. There we go, another quick save. We'll flatten it just to verify that we do have UVs. Yep, so we do have eye UVs. Eyeball UVs. Make sure we have these order selected, so we want the gray one selected. Oops, I not click the gray one, so let's give it a minute. It'll not do it. We'll have to hit undo. There we go. Make sure we have the gray one selected, or the non-textured one selected. Then do our project. There we go. And so now we have one that has the UV is laid out on it. Don't need to flatten it. We do need to check, make the texture map. So let's go to UV, 4K. Let's go to texture map, create from polypaint. There we go. And so now we should be good. We should be able to export these eyeballs out again. I'll duplicate this one just so I have the other side before I export. So under duplicate and then mirror. And now we have two eyes, just like we've done before. And then we'll export out one of the eyes. So I just grab the same one. This is left. Yes, replace it. And then we'll go to the right eye after this is done. So obviously some stuff we're checking is the texture quality. We don't want to lose any of the texture quality going from, the polypaint high res to the lower res ones. So you also want to make sure that we don't lose any of our detail that we've added to it. Slight detail loss maybe, but not, significant. Something happened. Let's try exporting that again. Make sure nothing's open. So we'll just delete these two. Maybe that's causing an issue. And delete. There we go. And then we'll just re-import. This eye, add it to the scene. Okay, that came in. Let's export this one out. Obviously, you can see where file management is super important. Something happened to my right eye, it just disappeared, so we'll export that out. Make sure you don't get an error this time. And then we'll re-import that one. There it is. Add to scene, import. And then just to see if everything worked, we can just turn these clear parts off and see that, yes, everything did come in. So that's where I want to leave it at this video. The next video will go through the actual rendering part of that.